Welcome to Biomechanics on Our Minds. My name is Melissa Boswell.
And I'm Hannah O'Day, and we're PhD students at Stanford University.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Society of Biomechanics.
It's
time for Boom.
Welcome to Boom, where we have
Biomechanics on our minds.
Boom.
Boom.
Boom, boom, boom.
Boom, 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 boom.
Boom.
Hi Boomers, Hannah and Melissa here. We wanted to introduce our first episode of Student Voices, a new series part of Biomechanics on Our Minds. You told us that you wanted more student perspectives, and this series is just for that. By students and for students. So, while you're hearing us now, the remainder of this episode and future episodes will be entirely run by other students.
Sometimes it'll be students talking to experts, and other times students talking to students, answering the questions that you are curious about. So enjoy this new Boom series, Student Voices, and the new accompanying music, which is extra just like us. And if you have an idea for an episode of Student Voices, or if you want to host your own episode, reach out to us at biomechanicsonOurMinds@gmail.com or send us a tweet at biomechanicsOOM.
Welcome to Student Voices, a series from Biomechanics on Our Mind. My name is Grace Kellaher, and I'm a master's student at the University of Florida in the Department of Applied Physiology and Kinesiology. I wanted to get a better idea of what graduate school life is like. So today, I have the pleasure of talking with Scott Uhlrich, a PhD student at Stanford University.
Who do I hear? Voices. The student is near. Voices. Student voices. Voices. Voices.
Do you mind telling me a little bit about yourself and what you do at Stanford and what kind of line of research you're in?
I did my undergraduate degree at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and then spent a couple summers working at a medical device firm in Boulder, Colorado. And after finishing undergrad, I came straight out to Stanford for a master's degree and continued on with the PhD in Scott Delp's neuromuscular biomechanics lab. My current research, I guess generally I'm interested in non-surgical rehabilitation treatments for people with various types of musculoskeletal pathologies. And currently I'm working with individuals with knee osteoarthritis, coming up with and deploying gait modification strategies to reduce the loading in their knee. So we use biofeedback to teach people to change either their kinematics or their coordination strategy to reduce their knee loading and hopefully improve their pain and slow the progression of their disease. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in graduate school?
I'm a first-year master's student, definitely not as far along in my education as you are. Like I said, I'm at the University of Florida, and I also did my undergrad there. I actually just finished up in May, so jumped right in. I do clinical biomechanics research under Dr. Chris Haas, and our lab focuses on locomotion and balance in pathologic populations, especially movement disorders in people with Parkinson's disease and also healthy aging. And then I'm really interested in more complex locomotor tasks like obstacle crossing and backward walking and fall prevention. So I guess we can jump right in with some questions that I have for you, because this whole grad school thing is kind of a new area for me. So much to learn, and there's so many things I want to know.
Yeah, sure. It's one of those things that I feel like once you get good at it, you don't need to be good at it anymore. So it's always good to ask questions of people that, are a couple years ahead of you. So
I always like asking people why they decided to go to grad school. So what made you, or why did you decide that you wanted to go get a master's, get a PhD? Like, why didn't you stop after undergrad?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was a combination of a lot of factors, but I spent some time in undergrad doing research with a professor at Baylor, and we were doing fluid dynamics research with applications for geophysics and oil drilling and that sort of thing. So that was a great experience, and then I spent a couple years working at a medical device company in Boulder called Covidian. They recently got bought out by Medtronic. So I got to work in the med device world and a little bit in the research world, and I enjoyed both of those experiences. I loved research, the open-endedness of it, getting to pursue really interesting questions that might not be profitable in the next 6 months, like sometimes might have to happen in industry. And I knew that I would probably like teaching. But what I saw in the medical device world was that a lot of the people doing the work that I thought was super interesting, so the R&D work, people who were in kind of the new product development world that were defining the direction of the company, those folks had definitely a master's, and a handful of them had PhDs. So I kind of put that all together and said, I might like the academic research route, definitely interested in industry, but either way, it seemed like a professional degree was something that I wanted to land in the places that I wanted in either of those. But I really wanted to try my hand at biomedical research. I hadn't had in the academic setting, hadn't quite had that combination. So I was super excited to come out to Stanford and do that, and was really fortunate to get to work with Scott Delp, where we get to do both experiments as well as musculoskeletal simulations, and I get to work with folks in radiology and just learn a ton of different approaches to solving these important biomedical questions. So as far as the kicking me from the master's to the PhD, I don't know that I can pinpoint an exact moment when that happened. I think it was some combination of really enjoying the lab that I was in, procrastinating on making life decisions on if I wanted to go into academia or not. Yeah. so kind of inertia in that, and then probably just the recognition that I could get a job in either industry, or obviously I would need a PhD for academia, but I could still get a job in industry if I had a PhD. So I kind of stuck around, and I'm glad I did.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I also did research as an undergrad and was able to get that experience. And like you, I loved the open-endedness of it so much. And I liked coming in and trying to answer questions that we didn't quite have the answer to yet. And I also was trying to procrastinate life decisions. I thought maybe I had wanted to do medicine, and then decided kind of last minute, no, actually, I think I want to go to grad school and do more of a master's or PhD route, which is how I ended up where I am right now. All right. So this is definitely something that's been on my mind lately because I have just started my program. But how did you handle your transition from being an undergrad to being a grad student? And do you have any advice on how to make that transition a little bit easier?
Sure. So I'll just relay on a piece of advice that I got early in my graduate career that has been super helpful for me. So I sat down with a professor, David Camarillo, during my first quarter, and he told me, he said, if you're not getting a few B's in your graduate coursework, you might be doing something wrong. You might be focusing too much on your coursework and too little on your research. And at first I was kind of appalled by this. I wasn't quite sure what to think, but it really makes a lot of sense. It's a good litmus test for if you are really focusing on the things that are important for at least a research-based master's and PhD program. Maybe this isn't quite as good advice for just a coursework-based master's. But in undergraduate, your job is to understand content, certainly, but to do well on your problem sets and your projects and your tests. And these are all really nicely compartmentalized and well-defined things. And if you do those things, you're succeeding. But when you get to a PhD, it's a little bit different. Your job certainly is to gain technical depth and breadth within your field, and that can be done through coursework. But a lot of the PhD is learning to swim in this ambiguous space of research, and so you learn to identify salient needs in the field, and from that to come up with really good answerable questions, and then you learn the techniques to answer those questions, and once you've answered them, you learn how to communicate them to your peers and to the world. And these skills don't necessarily come straight out of undergrad, and they're not also a lot of times coming straight out of your coursework in a grad program. So I think the temptation in graduate school is, when we're uncomfortable with this ambiguity, we might, instead of pushing through that, we might just sit down and spend a bunch of time doing a problem set and getting 110% on it because it's comfortable to do this well-defined thing. But I guess my suggestion is that instead of getting 110% on your problem set, maybe get an 85%, understand the material, but spend less time on it and use that saved time to continue working on gaining some of those research skills, even if it's uncomfortable. That transition was hard for me, and I know for some other people. What have you found in your transition to, I guess you've been at the same school, so that may have helped the transition, but how have you found the transition to be?
Yeah, definitely being in the same place has been helpful because I don't have to acclimate to a new university, a new department. I kind of already have an idea of how things work and I already know people and know what's going on around me. It's definitely been that more of a mental transition. Like you said, like it's not just about the grade anymore. Like the grade is nice, but it's really about, learning new skills, and it doesn't have to be all about doing well in the classroom. That's what I've only been in school for 3 weeks now, but it's definitely slowly starting to learn that it's a lot more, what are you doing outside the classroom? Because that matters just as much, and if not more, than what you're doing inside the classroom.
I found this doesn't work for everybody, but I found for me, like setting up physical spaces with boundaries was super helpful. So like, I put in my calendar when I was going to show up in the lab, and when I was in the lab, I didn't do homework. And then, I'd do my homework at my desk in my apartment or whatever. But that helped me keep boundaries, because when you're like sitting in lab and you're like, what do I do today that will get me closer to this ambiguous PhD? Like that's uncomfortable, and it's super tempting to be like, why don't I just do problem 2 on my problem set? That would be more efficient. Anyway, so just the physical spaces helped me a lot.
Yeah, I liked how you mentioned being uncomfortable. I think what I'm starting to get an idea of grad school is a lot of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you're not always going to have the answer to everything. And that's just something that you have to deal with in undergrad. Undergrad, every question you get asked, there's always one right answer. And in grad school, from what I can tell so far, that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Did you have any preconceived notions about grad school and what it was going to be like that turned out to be completely untrue?
In retrospect, this somewhat irrational fear that if I decided to go to grad school, I was like foregoing the possibility to have any fun in my 20s, slave to the PhD or something. I don't know exactly why I thought that, but I think that couldn't have been less true. You get to travel to super cool places for collaborations and conferences, and still have the flexibility to go hang out with family or friends if they're in different places. And I think for me, like the biggest thing that proved that wrong was how much fun that I've had just learning from like some of the smartest people in the world. My advisor in lab, there's a lot of awesome stuff going on here, but if I want to learn about statistics, some of the people that invented some really cool statistical methods are here on campus. And when I want to learn about radiology, there's some experts there. And, just anything you want to learn about, there's somebody who's an expert in it. And I'm sure the same is true at Florida. So that was like something I wasn't expecting, but a big surprise is just how much I enjoyed getting to, whenever there was something I wanted to learn, I could find someone to learn it from. And that's very satisfying to me.
One thing I didn't appreciate as an undergrad is that I am surrounded by the smartest people, that like leading experts in their fields. And if I had any questions about anything, like any of them could answer it, because they're just that awesome. And I'm really realizing now, and I don't think that's something I really thought about much when I was an undergrad.
You seem a little bit ahead of the game for, a first year grad student, and understanding what you want to do and what you're interested in. But as you're formulating those things and figuring out what you want to be an expert in, just talking to those people and learning about their experience and why they became an expert in what they did. I think that those are good data points as you define what is Grace going to be an expert in by the end of grad school.
So kind of on the opposite end of that question, is there something you learned about or experienced during your time in grad school that you didn't expect?
Organization and time management was something I thought that I was good at in undergrad. I was able to keep all my homework assignments and all those things in my head. But when I got to grad school, there was just too much going on and meeting with people and all this stuff. And so learning how to like schedule my time and also like defend my time so that, I wasn't always off. I had time to sit down and do research, and time to be in a quiet place where I could be creative and that kind of thing. So I think just a little bit was learning about myself and learning how I work well, and learning the spaces I need and the times of day and all of that. But also just learning how to be organized and efficient. You have to structure your time to achieve these kind of long-term goals. And yeah, I wasn't expecting maybe how challenging that was going to be, but it's a good thing to learn about yourself.
I know work-life balance is something that everyone is trying to achieve. no matter what area they're in, whether they're a student or in industry or a faculty member. But do you have any advice on how a grad student can try and maintain a work-life balance, or maybe what you do to try and maintain a work-life balance for yourself?
That's a great question. And I think it's a question we should keep asking ourselves at different life and career stages. For me, I think one of the biggest things is just keeping things in perspective. So I think it's tempting to let our emotions rise and fall with the results or progress or lack thereof in our research. But just keeping, for me, my identity rooted in something a little bit more solid just helps keep me a little more even keel. So I'm a Christian, and for me, that means that my identity is rooted deeply in my faith and doesn't have to do with the success or failure of my research. So that's super helpful. But just, again, keeping our work in perspective. And another part of that is spending time with people who aren't necessarily in your department or line of work. My wife is a social worker, so we come home and talk about the foster care system instead of joint moments all night. And for me, that's helpful to, again, zoom out a little bit and put things in perspective. And then obviously just taking time to do the things that you love. And, whether that's going to the gym or dancing or playing music or, spending good time with friends, whatever that is. For me, I love to go biking, and that sometimes helps me just clear my mind entirely. And sometimes allows me to get out of the minutia of day-to-day lab work and come up with creative ideas that I can't come up with when I'm kind of in the midst of the details. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your work-life balance strategies, and do you think those are going to change at all as you enter grad school?
When I was an undergrad, I would do a lot of, after a certain time of day, I would put all of my work down and just do things that I enjoyed doing, whether that be hanging out with friends, going to the gym, going for a run, going to a sporting event, anything like that. Because I have the type of personality where if I don't set the boundary and say, okay, after this time, I'm going to stop working on something, I will keep working on it. And it'll be like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, all I've done today is work and I haven't, taken a break. So definitely trying to keep that up. And I also try to schedule times where I meet with my friends or hang out with my friends who aren't in this field and who have interests outside of what I talk about all day long and what I'm studying all day long, just so, like you said, I'm not having conversations about like joint moments and angles all day long. And I get a little bit of a break, a little bit of time to like do other things. What's one thing you wish you had known before you started grad school?
That's a good question. This isn't going to be super insightful. I wish I knew how to code in C++. I knew a lot of MATLAB coming in, but our lab develops OpenSim, a modeling platform for musculoskeletal simulations. And anyway, that code base is in C++, and there's an API for Python and MATLAB that are super useful, but it's more powerful to know how to work in C++ to work with that. And there's been a lot of other applications that I just wish I had a better coding background. And I've never quite taken the time in grad school to go back and get super proficient at a lower level language like that. I just stick in my comfort of MATLAB and Python.
So, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself during your first year of grad school, other than maybe learn C++?
Yeah, something maybe more insightful than that. I think for me, just finding mentors that are where I wanted to be in the future. So I don't know. You seem like you have a pretty good idea of where you're headed. I was less defined in that, but I wasn't sure if it was industry or academia. And what I wish I'd done was just go find some people in those places and pick their brains on why they chose what they chose and what they were glad they did during their graduate career to help get them there. I feel like I kind of just pursued things that seemed interesting or, I don't know, motivating at the time, but it would have been nice to be a little bit more strategic about that. And I think mentors can help with that.
That's great advice. And like, I do have an idea of what I'm interested in and maybe what I want to do, but I'm really not entirely sure, which is why I'm here. And I really want to learn as much as I can from as many people as I can while I'm here. So I think that's great advice. And I will definitely keep that in mind and start reaching out to some other people in my department and across campus that maybe has some expertise or some experience that I'm interested in, but never really thought to talk to them about it.
sorry if you already mentioned this, but what are you interested? Are you for sure wanting to go into academia, or are you not quite sure if that's the end goal?
I'm not quite sure. I don't really. That's why I'm doing this master's program to kind of figure out, well, what do I want to do next? Because I know, like, I like biomechanics and I like the work that I've done in the lab, but I don't know exactly what I want to do after this program. So I'm calling it my victory lap, and I'm taking this next year or two to figure out kind of what I want to do and then learn as much as I can to help me get there. I really want to, I'm a sponge, is how I'm describing myself during this program. I just want to take it all in. And then once I have it, kind of figure out from there what I want to do next.
I think one thing that was super helpful to me in that stage of deciding, what was next was just, it was kind of awkward at first, and that's probably why I didn't do a lot of it, but just finding people that I knew, people who are in industry that may have, they got their PhD or didn't get their PhD, and just talk to a bunch of people in all of the potential places. And it surprisingly brought a lot of clarity to, like, oh, I think I would like that about what they do, or not like that about what they do. And it makes it a little bit less abstract what your life might look like if you make some of those choices. So I think it's helpful to get off campus and to chat with people who are actually in those roles. And our academic mentors are super helpful too, and a good resource for what it looks like to continue on in academia. But it's good to get an industry perspective too.
That's great advice. And it's not something I ever really thought about. I feel like sometimes I get stuck in this, I call it the UF bubble. I'm only thinking about kind of what's going on immediately around me and not really thinking too much past that. So what are some things you would suggest a first-year grad student do to make the most out of their experience?
We talked about this a little bit earlier, but we're surrounded by experts in so many different fields, and collaborating is one of the things I've enjoyed most about my time, and is something I'm thankful that I did. I get to learn about musculoskeletal biomechanics in my group, and like I mentioned, I get to work with folks in radiology who do musculoskeletal radiology, and I get to work with experts in more like solid mechanics modeling and understanding tissue mechanics of bone and soft tissue. And anyway, I just love getting to learn from these people, and it's fun to kind of put our skill sets together, and at the end of a collaboration to realize, like, bringing that all together, we've done something that was bigger than any one of us could have done, just because we had people from different fields. So I think that's one of the big benefits of the academy, is that you have such a diverse set of experts all in one place. But once you come to some clarity about that, like, be strategic in what you become an expert in. I think in undergrad, I don't know if this was your experience at UF, but we had this like course sheet, this little flow chart, right? And like you take Thermo 1, and then you take Thermo 2, and then you take heat transfer. It's just like this, somebody planned it all out for you, and you just do it because that's what you weren't mechanical engineering. I'm sorry, but anyway, you have this trajectory of courses, and in grad school you get to pick that, right? So I think just once you decide what you want, kind of tailor your experience in grad school to meet those goals. And that's, again, another place where the mentors can plug in and say, hey, it would be really great if you knew how to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know. So I wasn't particularly strategic in my first couple years, and that's something that I regret. So figuring out what the end goal might be and making a roadmap to get there, I think could be helpful.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been struggling with recently. Is I was so used to in undergrad, like, we had someone telling us exactly what courses you needed to take and in what order. And I get to grad school and they're just kind of like, take whatever, as long as you meet these requirements. And I'm like, oh, so there's really no one telling me, like, you have to take this course this semester or you won't graduate. It's really up to me. And that was surprising to me. I didn't expect that. And so it's definitely been something I've been trying to navigate recently. It's like, I have so much more freedom than I could have ever expected in terms of my education.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking, and there's people care that you succeed, but they're not there to tell you what to succeed in, and that's up to you to decide what's going to define grace academically and as a professional, wherever you go, like what's going to be your skill set. And that's exciting. Like it's a super cool opportunity, but I agree with you. It's kind of surprising when it comes at you.
If you could change anything about your grad school experience, what would it be?
My primary dissertation project is kind of it's a long-term clinical trial. And yeah, it's been going for 4 years, and we basically did most of the engineering work in the first year, and then the rest of it is just bringing people into the lab that, we do gate training for them. And so there were some years there in the middle that were pretty repetitive, I guess, and I didn't feel like I was learning a lot. And then I think somewhere in my 4th year, I went to Scott, my advisor, and was like, hey, I'm not learning. I don't have the time to learn things, and it's getting kind of repetitive. And in a matter of like 5 minutes, he had come up with a couple of super good ideas on how we could, make that better. And we were able to bring on some more folks onto the project to help out with some of the gate visits, and that freed me up to do some other things. And yeah, that was like the most impactful 15 minutes of my entire graduate career. And I waited until like my 4th year to have that conversation. So, I think just being willing to ask people for help when you need it, and they might not have the answer, but maybe they do. I think it takes humility to talk to your advisor or whoever else and say, hey, this isn't working, or I'm struggling with this. What do you think? And that's why they're advisors, is they've advised a lot of students, and they've seen what it looks like to make it through a master's program or a PhD program. And so just, leverage their knowledge and leverage, their desire and willingness to help you succeed. And I wish I'd done that sooner.
Definitely something I will be keeping in the back of my mind, because even in undergrad, I was the person who like struggled to ask for help. I never wanted to, unless I got to a point where I was like, I really can't do this on my own. I guess I should finally ask someone for help, where if I had asked someone, much earlier, my life would have been a lot easier, a lot less stressful than it had been. So trying not to repeat that pattern again in grad school. So I'm glad to hear you say that, like, do it. It's okay to ask for help. Like, that's why people are here to help you.
Yeah, and I think it brings people a lot of joy to get to help too. I've got, and I'm sure you either have already or will find these people, but I get to work with some postdocs in our lab and staff members. And I think a big reason some of them do what they do is because they really enjoy, and my advisor, like all of the more experienced researchers in our group really enjoy helping people, And so it's not like you're a burden to ask a question or to ask for guidance or say, hey, this isn't working. So I think people find a lot of satisfaction in getting to help you succeed.
Kind of my last question, hopefully ending things on a good note, is what 3 words would you use to describe your time in graduate school?
Oh man, do I get to describe them, or do I just have to just drop the words?
I'll leave it up to you, whatever you want to do.
Well, yeah, we've been on this topic, so I'll just summarize that. I think one word is just mentors. I'll give them a little bit of description. I'm super thankful for, like I said, the postdocs and staff members in our group and elsewhere that spend so much time like helping me and helping other grad students. I think that's been like a defining reason for my positive experience here. That's one word. Humbling would be another word. It's really good to learn that there's a lot of people that are way smarter than you. And there's always someone who's smarter than you or better than you at something, and that's great. We're all good at something, and bring a lot to the conversation. But it's grad school has definitely been humbling in that. And I would say I think the last thing about grad school is it's been very clarifying for me. And just I came in not knowing exactly what I wanted to do, and yes, it has been a while, but in 5 years, I've found a lot of clarity in what I enjoy doing and what I hope to do in the future. And the ambiguity at the beginning, I think, gets better by the end. So, what are the three words that describe what you hope to get out of graduate school?
Okay. Well, I also hope it's clarifying, because I'm here because I don't exactly know what I want to do next. And so I'm really hoping that by the end of my program, I will have a better idea of what I want to do and where I want to go, and will have gotten the skills to help get me there. I hope it'll be like mind-opening. There's so much information that I want to learn that I haven't learned yet. And so I'm hoping that I will be able to learn all of those things by the time I'm done. I think maturity would be the last thing. I really hope that I grow as a person, as a student, as a researcher, and that by the end of my master's degree, I'm a more mature, more well-spoken, more educated person than I was when I started.
Awesome. Those are all very achievable things. It'll be fun to go back and listen to this once you've graduated, and I'm sure that you will see more clarity and you'll have learned a ton. So cool. Well, thank you so much, Grace. That was super fun.
I really appreciate hearing your perspective and your thoughts and all the advice that you've given. It's definitely given me things to think about as I continue on, and just a new perspective.
Awesome. I think no good boom podcast would be completed without a 1, 2, 3 boom. All right, boom on 3. 1, 2, 3, boom.
Who do I hear? Voices. The student is near. Voices. Student voices. Voices. Voices.
Thanks for listening to Student Voices, a series by Biomechanics on Our Minds, by students and for students. If you have an idea for an episode of Student Voices, or if you want to host your own episode, please reach out to us at biomechanicsonOurMinds@gmail.com or tweet at us at biomechanicsOOM.
We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep these conversations going.
Bida boom, Gucci. Bida boom, Louis. Bida boom. Bida boom.